I had this conversation with Chris in the comments of one of my rewatch videos, specifically Window Pane, which got me thinking about Angela's antagonists and wondering, how bad are they really? So I thought that'd be interesting to look at. This is gonna be a quick video. Angela has 3 major antagonists in the series: Nanette, Miss Briggs, and her older brothers. I'm gonna start with Mark and Derrick, her brothers. I actually found them underused characters and would have liked to see a bit more of them. So they are rough with her. They're typical jock bro, bully older brother characters, and they're twins, so they definitely have the advantage in size and numbers. And sometimes it does vary on how abusive they are. Sometimes they're just roughhousing with her, like most of the time they're wrestling with each other. Sometimes they gang up on her, which is kind of typical, being honest. Especially having grown up around boys, I know that's true. They do play rough. But with her, I can see sometimes they go too far and don't really know that balance. Other times, the show writes them as really abusive.
Come on, Mark and Derrick. We've been in here for 5 days.
I have to warn you, if I don't have water, I'm quite susceptible to heat stroke. And believe you me, it is not a pretty sight.
Fine. If you want water, we'll give you water.
There's the time they leave her and her friends in a car in the middle of traffic.
Wait! You can't just leave us here. It's child endangerment.
I thought, Jesus, where are the parents on some of this? But they also have it in them to be decent. When they're with the family all together, Mark and Derrick are surprisingly cooperative and they never complain, which honestly, kudos, especially in the 90s. They're helping out with the family Thanksgiving and are really excited to do so. They're happy to be part of the modern art in Window Pane. They're just doing their thing anyway. And they watch home movies together and genuinely enjoy themselves, so Mark and Derrick are surprisingly chill and go with the flow. And they've also bonded with Angela occasionally. Yeah, she's still the butt of the joke, but they actively teach her how to be a pranking master. Which is actually kind of nice, watching them bond in their own very strange way. I would have liked to see more of that characterization. Yeah, they do deserve the revenge fantasy sometimes. Yeah, they actually are too rough with her. But it's interesting. I thought there is that balance in there. This is kind of typical for family. You get annoyed with them. Sometimes they genuinely do things to annoy you and do deserve whatever comes out of it. And sometimes you can't do anything. Where are the parents occasionally on this? Seriously. Free-range children. But they are ultimately a loving family, and I would have liked to see a bit more of that dynamic. So that's fun to play with. Gonna switch gears, talking about Nanette. Yeah, I'm gonna talk about her next because I find her interesting. She is the one the show focuses on the most, and she is the one Angela hates the most, but I don't actually think she's the worst. With Nanette, this is somebody who's at Angela's level. She is always the person who comes out on top, always the person who has the unfair advantage and rubs it in, is very entitled. But Nanette's also a product of her environment, and she has shown that she can be decent when she's away from that. Some people have interpreted that she was genuinely trying to help out in The Substitute and didn't deserve Jerry's hostility. Truth be told, she doesn't deserve Jerry's hostility. And I think the show could have done a bit more. If the idea was that she was trying to suck up to Jerry for her own gain, could have showed she was trying to get something out of it. So I understand that interpretation. And she has been very, very sweet at times. Like when she wants to give Angela the scarf for Secret Santa. Yeah, she backs out at the last minute and is a jerk about Angela's gift. But that moment earlier, how did she know she wanted a scarf? She genuinely wanted to do that for her. That was a very sweet scene. So I personally interpreted that as, oh, this is someone who wanted to do something for a best friend or a crush and chickened out at the last minute. There was also the Hanukkah episode where she ends up in possession of Gina Lash's menorah and willingly brings it back. Unlike when Angela writes a list of mean things about people when she's hurt and embarrassed, and Nanette finds it and blackmails her. So Nanette clearly takes a break from being a bitch around the holidays, and definitely has her limits. She's also a kid, and around this dysfunction. We've seen her parents a couple times in the show. They're unpleasant. So clearly the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. But the worst of Angela's antagonist is hands down Mrs. Briggs. Because she's making the rivalry between Angela and Nanette worse. She's the one who sets up this unfair standard. She's blatantly favoring Nanette. Blatantly favoring anybody who gives her attention. And very clearly punishing people who don't play by her rules. And the standards are always changing. She doesn't have as many decent moments, if any. There's maybe one or two in there, briefly. But more often than not, Miss Briggs is in a position of authority and abusing it for her own gain. For very petty reasons, too. She's constantly needing validation from these kids. When Nanette's out of the picture, she gets attention from Angela. And she's willing to punish people who don't write poems about her. She's somebody who abuses her power, sets up this unfair standard, and while I don't think she caused Angela and Nanette's rivalry, I do think she is the reason it's worse. She does make it worse. So, I think it would be really, really interesting to play with that dynamic more. Also, Miss Briggs is freaking weird, and definitely has a lot of issues that I'm sure she's projecting onto her students, as you've seen in many of my rewatch videos. Yeah. Miss Briggs is definitely the source of the most what the fuck comedy in the show. Yeah, she's weird. And for that reason, I do think she's the worst of it, even though it makes perfect sense to me that Angela would hate Nanette the most, because that's the person who's at her level, that's the person who's receiving this unfair standard, and that's the person who's rubbing it in. Oh, I'm so much better than you. And it makes sense that, as a kid, the person at your level would be the person you hate the most. Of course, I fully understand just how deep an effect that your bullies can have on you, even into adulthood. I know that very well. So it definitely makes sense to me that Angela would hate Nanette the most. I also get the sense that Angela has to deal with Nanette that much more, because she deals with her at school, occasionally at home, out and about around town, so she sees her more. This is someone at her level who goes out of her way to hurt her, who rubs it in her face when she does something better. And even though a lot of that does seem petty to us as an adult, and even as an outsider watching, it can seem pettier, but in the moment, those emotions are big. They do have a lasting impact, and they can stay with you. It makes perfect sense. This is the person she would hate the most. Objectively, Miss Briggs is honestly the worst of Angela's antagonists. I'd be curious to know who feels the same, who feels differently. But those are my thoughts.